Welcome back. We are discussing the MBT Arjun vis-a-vis other tanks in India and elsewhere. Before the discussion, Brigadier Bikramjit, we were discussing, the performance of the tank. I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I wanted to chip in with one more point.
Yeah.
That is about transfer of technology. You see, unless you have a certain number of tanks being produced in the country, nobody will allow you the transfer of technology. Like the MTU engine being produced by the Germans, when we wanted to get only about 50 tanks or 100 tanks, they said, we buy 300 engines, we'll give you the transfer of technology. So therefore, unless you produce them in mass scale, no country will give you transfer of technology. So therefore, you have to take that decision, whether you want to stick to 2 regiments or you want a certain strike formation, equipped only with Arjun, so that you have the requisite tanks and the technology transfer.
Very, very valid. We can't have an apple-to-apple comparison, obviously. But tell me, how do the 2 tanks compare in your opinion, the T-72 or T-90 on one hand and the MBT Arjun?
T-90 and Arjun tanks are 2 different classes. So comparison is very different. But nevertheless, since we have carried out in August, no, it was in, I think, March 10, comparative trials between a squadron of T-90s and Arjun tanks, they compared very favorably. And there were certain issues, minor points, like first point was ergonomics. The crew fatigue, Arjun scored better in that. The firing the first day, the night firing, they had miserable results, the Arjun. And in the morning they discovered that the problem was with the mother reference system.
Okay.
They corrected it, and the next night their results were far superior to T-90s. Then they carried out mobility trials of non-stop running for 150 kilometers.
Which would be required in the desert in any case.
Non-stop 150 kilometers, 14 tanks of T-90 and Arjuns. Arjuns and T-90s had no problem. Only in one particular case for an Arjun, there was a track shed. And track shed, that too, later on, as the report suggests, was due to the fault of the driver who can't angle it and slope pull the stick which he should have pulled.
Okay.
Then lacuna found in Arjun in one is that the penetration aspect of APFSDS round is much less. So that is an area which needs to be looked into.
I think you were also privy to these trials, and a lot has been written about it. Would you like to add to what Brigadier said?
I think in the trial which was conducted squadron to squadron, the Arjun has performed extremely well. Its firing on the move has been exceptionally good. Its mobility in the desert has been very good. And I think the problem is not in terms of capabilities. The problem is in terms of reliability. And that is an area where people look at it with skepticism.
But how do the 2 tanks compare in the power to weight ratio?
Power to weight ratio of the Arjun is superior to that of the T-90 and way superior to that of the T-72. The MBT Arjun has a power to weight ratio of 24 horsepower to a ton, which is not just better than the T-90, it's as good as any tank in the world. Perhaps the Abrams is marginally better than this. So that's why weight itself is not a problem. If you have a heavy tank and you have a sufficiently powerful engine in it, which gives it the mobility and agility which you require on the battlefield, that tank becomes an asset because the tank can take a beating. The Arjun can sustain a T-72 hit at point blank range. Where the Arjun is lacking, I think, is in the overall package. The overall package implying logistics, mobility,
which I'm sure can be made up.
Technology acceptance, all that capability build up has to be there. Now there's a huge problem there, and that problem is, can you really build up that capability over small numbers? The point which Brigadier Bikramjit made a little while ago. If you want to develop that kind of capability, then you should have adequate numbers. We haven't got adequate numbers. We're not planning to have adequate numbers. So I suspect that this...
well, I think we're not planning to have adequate numbers because the Directorate General of Mechanized Forces is somewhat chary of the tank. I think they've been referring to it as a dud.
It's not really that. I think they've done further work on the FMBT, the future MBT, and that is the tank which they are looking at as the tank of the future from 2020 onwards. So the FMBT is going to be lighter than an Arjun, more versatile, and perhaps it will meet our requirements more comprehensively.
Well, just come back to the
future. Just add to this, Mr. Sandhu. it's slightly humorous. It's just like all these housing projects putting up a demonstration flat, which actually makes you fall head over heels in love with what you expect, but you actually enter into the nightmare. So this trial, I think, should not be seen out of context. A, there's a difference of 20 tons between the two weights. 20 tons is large amount of tons. B, the point made by Bobby is that the supporting system wasn't there. Please understand that the Merkava has 10 derivatives, each one of which have to be developed. The Abrams has 13 derivatives. How many derivatives does the Arjun have? Not even one.
We are now going in for the Mark II.
Not only that, it is ironic, it is genuinely ironic and sad really, that after having stated that the Arjun is the dream tank, why is the DRDO now going back to a tank that weighs 48 tons? The FMBT is going to weigh 48 tons.
Well, that's because the futuristic requirement is that, no?
The point is that the futuristic requirement had never shifted. It was for the weight class of 40 to 45 tons as was the beginning point for the Arjun. Now we are coming back to that weight class after having almost perfected the 62-ton class. So what does it mean? We will wind up the 62-ton class and get to the T90 class, which should have been the effort right from the beginning.
But why not have a combination of the two? Because in the high altitude areas you need a lighter tank, and in the desert you can do with the heavier tank.
In fact, that throws up new dynamics because the requirement for the mountains may well be in the 20-ton or 15-ton class. But having said that, there are areas where certainly the 40-ton class can be used, and no doubt about that.
But Mehta, how does our tank fleet compare with the tank fleet of Pakistan? I think a lot of it, whatever we do.
There was a time way back when we were far, far superior. I think today the distances have closed, Mr. Sandhu. And perhaps we are just a little ahead of them at this moment, primarily because our wherewithal, our total packaging in terms of the mechanized infantry and the other wherewithal that goes into mechanized warfare is superior than theirs. They have a problem.
Brigadier Bikramjit, a lot has been talked about, the logistical issues relating to Arjun. Did you experience some of these, that the tank finds it difficult, there are no assault bridges for the tank to go across?
Well, there is definitely a requirement because the existing BLT cannot take an MBT, Arjun. It's classification of 4.
But if this tank was to be used in, let's say, the Punjab plains, the area is riverine, you have lots of water obstacles, then how do we negotiate the tank?
No, the BLT has been developed. Trials have been successfully conducted. Only thing it is to be produced now in numbers. Similarly, we have also carried out trials and have successfully developed MBFUs for the rail transportation.
Okay.
And the Tatas have also been modified. They have also come up with ARV known as AARV, Arjun Specific ARV, which is capable of handling an Arjun tank and its lift capability.
Okay.
So all these things have been worked out in the last 20 years.
Good.
All that needs is to be developed. If we wish to induct this tank in the plain, then that infrastructure will have to come up.
Well, I'm sure there are problems with almost all tanks. Even the T90 was reported with a lot of problems.
Indeed.
There were problems with the thermal imaging, there were problems with the missile systems.
In fact, both the tanks suffer from a unified and very serious problem, and that is of absence of air conditioning. Because the ambient temperature inside a tank that is firing goes up to 60 degrees and beyond. Now, with that kind of a temperature in the desert or wherever else you fire, certainly there was a requirement of quality improvement. And the T90, especially when it was inducted, suffered from all these problems. Over a period of time, things have substantially improved. But then one could say that similar improvement has taken place on the Arjun front. So what I am actually saying is that no self-respecting country in the world can do without its DRDO equivalent. We need to empower our DRDO. We want the DRDO to become integrative rather than isolated, which it currently is. Users who have actually exploited the tank should be there with them to guide. For example, take the single example of Israel, just a minute.
Yeah.
Israel involved its private industry in a huge way to produce the Merkava tank. It has changed its complete outlook of developing a tank by cutting down the developing cycle to about 5 years, 6 years. They say, all right, even if it has faults, let it run. Let the user point out which are the faults, we'll repair them then and there or improve them. In our case, we keep on changing GSQR, which is a user fault. The directorate is to blame. You can't blame the developer if every third day you change your mind as to what does the poor chap do. So everybody is to blame. Everybody has to put their heads together.
Right.
The GSQR was changed. GSQR was changed a number of times as we brought out, but there are reasons to that. If the DRDO takes 37 years to produce, by then the technological advancement and the technical requirement have changed. So therefore you can't accept something which you have said 50 years ago.
Talking of another aspect, General Garwal, how do the weapon systems of Arjun and T-90 compare? I mean, can both the tanks fire the missile and the shell? Do both of them have the capability to fire the anti-aircraft weapons?
The Arjun gun is a very good gun. It's a 120 millimeter rifled gun. It fires APFS, DS, HEAT. The penetrative capability of this ammunition is excellent. It has a missile firing capability. It fires the Lahak missile to a range of 6 kilometers. The T-90 has a very good gun. It's got a 125 smoothbore gun, and it also has missile firing capability. It has the reflex missile which fires to a range of 5 kilometers. So I think from the point of view of armament, both tanks are very good. I personally believe that whereas we going for long range engagement capability as a prerequisite, most battle engagements in our context are going to take place at very short ranges, and from that point of view, both tanks have excellent armament.
One or two issues I would like to add to what Bobby and General Mehta said. HEAT round is generally fired from a smooth barrel gun, so Arjun doesn't fire that. As far as the missile is concerned, the Lahak missile of the Israelis is being trial tested, and it is likely to be introduced.
True.
As for protection from top attack, laser guided munitions and all that, a urban survival kit is being developed and tested for Arjun tank. In addition to that, it is being painted with a certain amount of laser guidance, that whenever a smart munition is coming towards that side, the gun will rotate towards that side, which offers the best portion for armor protection, which is constant.
But do you think the DRDO has the capability to develop
all these things have been developed and are being trial tested?
Very heartening to hear that. Before we close, just a quick comment on what kind of a tank do we need for the future, let's say 30 years, 40 years from now? Very well.
I personally believe that the future MBT should be lighter. I think a future MBT...
But that undoes the entire work of the last 40 years then?
No, not really. Technology today permits you to bring about a lighter tank simply by going in for an autoloader as against to a 4-man crew. It has problems of its own, but I believe that if you want to make a tank in less than 50-ton class, it can easily be done using autoloader.
The tank of the future should be a lighter tank. General Mehta, would you agree?
In fact, Mr. Sandhu, my answer will be slightly different. A, I agree that the larger portion of the country would do with this 40-45 ton tank. B, we have hugely different terrain. The northeast, for instance, the mountains, for instance, the desert and the developed terrain are 4 distinct areas.
So you would have probably 3 different type of tanks, right?
I would suggest that a light tank is certainly required for many areas of the mountains, and perhaps a heavier tank is required for the desert. 40-ton tank is required for the developed area, but since desert is becoming developed area, I generally agree with him that the 40-50 ton class of weight is what is needed.
Brigadier, the tank of the future is lighter tank, which means a no for Arjun.
Well, not necessarily. I disagree on that issue with Bobby, because you look at world all over the world. No country in the world, major power, is relying on light tanks. Though all these countries, NATO countries, are dependent on using this tank outside their own terrain, yet they are not going for lighter tanks. It is only a smaller components that a lighter tank is existing to meet certain terrain requirement. The similar thing required in our country.
So that means for the MBT of the future, we'll need a separate discussion. Thank you very much for joining us in this discussion today. Since MBT Arjun is a product of 40 years of toil and labor, it should be further fine-tuned to meet our requirements. At the same time, maybe for our requirements in the high altitude areas and riverine plains, work on another main battle tank which is lighter could be speeded up. That is all in Defence Line today. Do write your feedback. Good luck and goodbye.